What if I told you that one woman nearly ruled an entire neighborhood like a dictator? It's not a politician, not a police officer, but just a neighbor. Imagine living on a street where every sound was judged, every car parked was reported, and every family felt like prisoners in their own homes. It sounds absurd, almost like fiction. But for Daniel Rourke, it wasn't a story. It was his life. And when he finally stood up to the woman who had turned his neighborhood into a private kingdom, the events that followed became something nobody could ever forget. At first, Daniel didn't even realize how deep the control went, he thought. The occasional letter, the snide remarks, the notes about lawn length or driveway cracks were just the quirks of a nitpicky neighbor. But this wasn't just nitpicking. This was dominance. This was fear disguised as order. It all centered around one person, Karen Miles. She wasn't elected. She wasn't even officially in charge. But she acted as though the entire neighborhood was her personal empire. She wielded intimidation like a weapon. Daniel, being who he was, quiet, observant, someone who hated unnecessary conflict, tried to let it slide. For months, maybe even years, he stayed silent, brushing off the complaints, laughing off the warnings. But silence is tricky. Sometimes it's strength, sometimes it's surrender. In this case, the silence only fed Karen's power. Each time no one spoke up, she grew bolder. Each time a neighbor complied, she grew louder. Until finally, Daniel saw what nobody else dared to admit. Karen wasn't just enforcing petty rules, she was running the neighborhood like a tyrant. And here's where it gets dark. Because once you start looking at tyranny up close, you realize it's not built on power, it's built on fear. And fear collapses the moment someone refuses to fight. That someone was about to be Daniel. But his fight wasn't loud, it wasn't violent, it wasn't reckless. It was calculated. What he did, how he flipped the script and changed. The neighborhood forever. It started one late summer evening. The air was heavy, the street was unusually quiet, and Daniel noticed something strange. People avoided eye contact. Neighbors who once waved now stared at their lawns. Kids who once played outside suddenly weren't allowed past their driveways. It wasn't just one woman making noise anymore. It was fear spreading like smoke. That's when Daniel realized. He would no longer live like a guest in his own home. He would no longer let one person decide what news for dozens of families. The line had been crossed, and he was done being silent. But here's the catch. Don't take on someone like Karen directly. She thrived on confrontation, on scenes that made her look powerful. If Daniel shouted, she'd win. If he fought, she'd win. If he broke the rules, she'd have the police at his door in minutes. The only way to fight someone like her was to turn her own game against her. So Daniel waited. He watched. He studied her patterns like a hunter studies prey. He learned which nights she patrolled the streets, which houses she targeted, how she manipulated certain neighbors into being her eyes and ears. And then he laid the trap. It wasn't physical. It wasn't violent. It was psychological. He needed her to expose herself. He needed her to cross the line in a way the entire neighborhood could see. In a way no one could deny. And the opportunity came sooner than expected. One evening, family parked their car slightly off Central. Nothing blocking traffic, just a few inches off. Most people didn't notice what Karen was. She stormed over, flipped door to door, snapped her phone, parked the windows. As usual, the family stayed silent, too afraid to challenge her. This time, he reported everything from his porch, her attempt to find him for a violation that didn't exist. As she turned her attention to him, demanding that he cut his hedges by morning, Daniel smiled, because finally, she had given him what he needed. Proof. But that was just the beginning. The real plan required patience. Daniel didn't want just one recording. He wanted a pattern. He wanted a case so airtight that when he finally revealed it, no one could dismiss it as exaggeration. So he kept collecting. Night after night, incident after incident, he built, filed, and with each clip, each screenshot, each piece of evidence, he felt the balance of power shift. For the first time, Karen was being watched. Weeks passed and the neighborhood tension reached a breaking point. People whispered, families. A Daniel hit play. The recording spoke louder than she ever could. Her voice, her threats, her lies all echoing through the night as the neighbors listened. Gasps, whispers, shock. For the first time, everyone saw the truth. And Karen's mask cracked. But here's where it gets interesting. Tyrants don't just collapse when exposed. They lash out. Karen was no exception. Instead of backing down, she doubled down. She screamed. She threatened lawsuits. She called Daniel a liar. But the neighbors didn't move. They didn't support her. And in that silence, Daniel saw at the moment her power broke. She was over. It happened after that. That's weird. The story takes its darkest turn because Karen wasn't done. She still had cards in play. Daniel was about to discover that exposing a tyrant doesn't end. It starts with Karen's mask cracked. Don't be fooled. Because when people who thrive on fear realize they're losing it, they don't surrender. They escalate. That's exactly what happened. After Daniel exposed her recordings to the neighborhood, the air was heavy. Some neighbors whispered what was finally over. Others locked their doors tight, worried about retaliation. And Daniel, he knew better. He knew that. Someone like Karen wouldn't just vanish. No, she would strike back. The only question was how, and she didn't wait long to answer. The very next morning, Daniel woke up to a letter taped to his door. It wasn't typed, it wasn't signed. But it was her. He could feel it in the venomous words scrawled across. The page, "You think you've won? But I run this street. If you push me again, you'll regret it. No evidence, no direct threat. It's just enough poison to remind you that the war wasn't finished." Most people would have backed down. Most would have taken that as a warning, maybe even apologized just to restore peace. Daniel wasn't most people. He knew fear only works if you give it permission. And so, instead of backing down, he prepared for the inevitable counterattack. And he was right. Within days, complaints started flowing. Karen accused Daniel of everything. Noise violations, proper trash placement, even unauthorized work comments on her walls. Each report was more ridiculous than the last. Each time, Daniel countered with documentation. Photos, timestamps, evidence so solid that even the HOA board wants Karen's loyal allies had no choice but to assess her crimes. But here's the thing. Daniel didn't just defend himself. He made sure the board saw the pattern. He made sure they connected the dots between her personal vendetta and the rules she weaponized. And slowly, the board began to see what Daniel had seen all along. Karen wasn't protecting order. She was manufacturing chaos. Still, Karen wasn't finished. One night, Daniel caught her outside his home, snapping photos of his car, his windows, even peering into his yard with a flashlight. That was the line. That wasn't just harassment, it was stalking. And Daniel, calm as ever, documented the entire thing. When he called her out, she didn't deny it. She smiled. The rules were broken. She listened. See, but this time, she had gone too far. Daniel reached out to the city. He filed official complaints, handed over his growing mountain of evidence, and demanded action. And here's where the story turns from neighborhood drama into a full-blown record. Because once officials saw the recordings, the harassment, the logs, the late-night footage, Karen wasn't just a difficult neighbor anymore. She was a liability. Word spread. Faster than Karen could contain. The neighborhood once fractured by fear. Families who had stayed silent suddenly found their voices. Stories poured out about crimes that never existed, about threats whispered in driveways, about intimidation that had lasted for years. And every story matched Daniel's evidence like puzzle pieces falling into place. Karen's empire was collapsing. But like any cornered tyrant, she refused to let go quietly at the next neighborhood board meeting. She stormed in, demanding Daniel be punished, demanding her authority be restored. She shouted, she slammed her fists, she pointed fingers. But this time, something happened she never expected. Silence. The silence of fear. The silence of rejection. Supported her. No one backed her claims. Even her closest allies avoided eye contact, and Daniel stood, calm, steady. And with the same quiet confidence he had shown before, he presented his final card, a compiled file